Since the dawn of civilization, we've witnessed a fascinating phenomenon. Those who appear most vulnerable often wield the greatest power. Not the crude power of physical force, but something infinitely more subtle and devastating: dominion over perception and the minds of others. But what if I told you that the key to this paradox was unlocked by a philosopher who transformed ancient Eastern wisdom into Western language? Alan Watts understood that we live in a society obsessed with appearances of strength. We flex muscles we don't have, shout opinions we don't understand, and exhaust ourselves trying to prove our worth through desperate displays of power. This is the armadillo approach to life. All armor, no awareness. And it's precisely why most people remain powerless despite their constant efforts to appear strong. Throughout this video, we won't just explore abstract concepts. We're going to dive deep into Alan Watts's revolutionary understanding of power dynamics and extract a practical manual for true influence. Prepare yourself, because the knowledge you're about to receive challenges everything you've been taught about strength, vulnerability, and control. By the end of these 25 minutes, you will understand why the most powerful people in history mastered the art of appearing fragile while dominating them.
The first principle Alan Watts identified is this: true power lies not in what you can force, but in what you can allow. The moment you try to control everything, you reveal your fear of losing control. The moment you appear desperate for respect, you signal that you don't deserve it. This works because human psychology operates on a fundamental principle. We are attracted to what we cannot fully possess or predict. Think about it. The person who seems to need nothing from you holds all the cards in any interaction. They become the prize, while those chasing them become the supplicants. Consider the story of Lao Tzu, the legendary founder of Taoism. According to legend, when he decided to leave civilization, the gatekeeper refused to let him pass until he wrote down his wisdom. What did Lao Tzu do? He didn't demand passage, didn't threaten, didn't argue his authority. Instead, he simply sat down and wrote the Tao Te Ching, one of the most influential books in human history. By appearing to submit, he gained immortality. His perceived weakness became his ultimate strength. In our modern world, this principle manifests everywhere. The most successful CEOs often speak softly and ask questions rather than shouting orders. The most influential social media personalities share their struggles rather than their victories. The most attractive people in dating are those who seem complete without a relationship. Your practical arsenal. Stop trying to prove your worth to others. Instead, become genuinely interested in their perspectives. Ask questions that show you're listening, not preparing your next argument. When someone challenges you, respond with curiosity rather than defensiveness. Watch how quickly the dynamic shifts in your favor.
Watts taught that vulnerability is not weakness, it's the ultimate expression of confidence. Only someone truly secure can afford to show their humanity.
This is why authentic vulnerability creates instant connection and influence. The psychological mechanism is profound. When you reveal a genuine struggle or uncertainty, you give others permission to be human around you. This creates a bond far stronger than any professional facade. You become real to them, and real people are infinitely more influential than perfect people. The ancient Chinese strategist Sun Tzu understood this when he wrote about appearing weak when you are strong. But Watts took it further. He realized that by actually being vulnerable about certain things, you create an unshakable foundation of authenticity that makes you immune to manipulation. Look at how Winston Churchill handled Britain's darkest hour. He didn't promise easy victory or pretend there was no danger. Instead, he said, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat." This vulnerability didn't weaken his position, it made him unassailable. People trusted him precisely because he told them the truth about their situation. Today, this plays out in leadership, sales, and relationships. The manager who admits they don't have all the answers, but commits to figuring it out together, builds more loyalty than the one who pretends to be infallible. The salesperson who acknowledges their product's limitations while highlighting its strengths closes more deals than the one who oversells. Your practical arsenal. Identify one area where you can be authentically vulnerable without compromising your core competence. Share a genuine struggle you overcame or a lesson you learned the hard way. Notice how this creates deeper connections and actually increases rather than decreases respect.
Perhaps Watt's most counterintuitive insight was this: the less you want something, the more likely you are to get it. This isn't about playing hard to get, it's about genuine non-attachment to outcomes. When you desperately want something, you emit an energy of scarcity that repels the very thing you're seeking. But when you truly don't need something, you negotiate from a position of abundance. You can walk away, which gives you all the power in any situation. This principle is rooted in the Taoist concept of Wu Wei, acting without forcing. Like water flowing around obstacles, you achieve more by adapting than by pushing. The person who doesn't need the job gets the job. The person who doesn't need the relationship attracts the relationship. Consider the story of Alexander the Great's encounter with Diogenes the cynic. Alexander, the most powerful man in the world, found the philosopher sunbathing. "I am Alexander the Great," he announced. "Ask for anything you want." Diogenes replied, "Move out of my sunlight." Alexander was so impressed by this man who wanted nothing from him that he reportedly said, "If I were not Alexander, I would want to be Diogenes." The philosopher's complete lack of need made him more powerful than the emperor. In business, the entrepreneur who's willing to walk away from a bad deal makes better deals. In relationships, the person who's complete within themselves attracts healthier partners. In negotiations, the party with the best alternative to agreement holds all the cards. Your practical arsenal. Before entering any important situation, spend time cultivating genuine acceptance of all possible outcomes. Remind yourself of your alternatives. Practice the phrase, "I'm curious to see what happens," instead of "I need this to work out." This shift in internal state will be immediately felt by others and dramatically increase your influence.
So far, we've established the fundamental pillars of Watt's approach to power through apparent fragility. You've learned to embrace perceived weakness, strategic vulnerability, effortless presence, and the paradox of not wanting. These form your defensive foundation. They make you unmanipulable and naturally attractive. But this is just the beginning. What we've covered so far is like learning to defend in chess. Essential, but not sufficient. Now we're going to explore the more advanced applications of these principles. The next strategies aren't for the faint of heart. They teach you how to actively shape others' perceptions while maintaining your authentic center. This is where apparent fragility becomes a weapon of influence more powerful than any display of force.
Watts taught that the ultimate victory comes not from overpowering your opponent, but from allowing them to overpower themselves. This is the martial arts principle of using an attacker's force against them, applied to psychological and social interactions. The mechanism is elegant. When someone pushes, most people push back, creating conflict. But when you yield strategically, you remove the resistance they're pushing against, causing them to lose balance. In that moment of imbalance, you can redirect their energy toward your desired outcome. This principle is perfectly embodied in the story of Odysseus and the Cyclops. Trapped in the cave, Odysseus could have tried to fight Polyphemus directly, a battle he would surely lose. Instead, he told the Cyclops his name was Nobody. When Odysseus blinded the giant and other Cyclops asked what was wrong, Polyphemus shouted, "Nobody is hurting me." They assumed he was fine and left him alone. By appearing to be nothing, Odysseus became everything, the architect of his own escape. In contemporary settings, this plays out in negotiations, where the skilled negotiator allows the other party to feel like they're winning, while actually guiding them toward a mutually beneficial outcome. In management, it's the leader who lets team members think the good ideas were theirs. In conflict resolution, it's the mediator who yields to both sides' emotions while steering toward resolution. Your practical arsenal. The next time someone challenges you aggressively, try this. Instead of defending your position, get curious about theirs. Ask questions that show you're taking their concerns seriously. Watch how their aggression transforms into collaboration when they realize you're not fighting back. Then, from this position of yielding, you can guide the conversation toward your actual goals. One of Watts's most sophisticated insights was that controlled ambiguity creates more influence than false clarity. When you're slightly hard to read, people project their own desires onto you, making you more attractive and powerful. This works because the human mind abhors uncertainty and will fill in gaps with whatever it most wants to be true. By remaining somewhat mysterious, you become a blank
canvas for others' projections. They see in you what they most need to see, which makes you irresistible. The master of this technique was Socrates, who claimed to know nothing while dismantling the certainties of experts. His strategic ignorance made him more powerful than any dogmatic teacher. People came to him not because he had all the answers, but because he asked the right questions. His confusion created clarity for others. In modern business, Steve Jobs exemplified this principle. His keynote presentations were masterclasses in strategic ambiguity. He would hint at revolutionary changes without revealing everything, creating anticipation and desire. His famous phrase, "One more thing," became legendary because it promised something without defining what. Your practical arsenal. Practice the art of the meaningful pause. When someone asks you a direct question, take a moment before responding. This brief uncertainty makes your eventual answer more impactful. Also, learn to say, "I'm not sure about that," when you could give a quick answer. It often leads to more interesting conversations and positions you as thoughtful rather than reactive.
Watts realized that every strength contains a weakness, and every weakness contains a strength. The art lies in presenting your weaknesses in ways that actually become advantages. This isn't about deception, it's about reframing. The psychological principle is that people are naturally drawn to authenticity and suspicious of perfection. When you acknowledge a limitation while showing how you've turned it into a strength, you become both relatable and admirable. Consider the story of Demosthenes, the greatest orator of ancient Greece, who started with a severe speech impediment. Rather than hiding this weakness, he turned it into his defining strength. He practiced speaking with pebbles in his mouth, shouted over ocean waves, and eventually became more powerful than generals or politicians. His weakness became his ultimate weapon because it forced him to develop extraordinary skill. In today's world, this principle is everywhere. The entrepreneur who admits they're not the smartest person in the room, but commits to hiring smarter people. The leader who acknowledges their tendency toward impatience, but channels it into urgent action. The teacher who admits they're still learning, but uses that curiosity to connect with students. Your practical arsenal. Identify one personal weakness that you've learned to manage or even leverage. Practice telling that story in a way that shows growth rather than defeat. For example, instead of saying, "I'm not good with details," try, "I've learned I'm a big picture person, so I've gotten really good at finding detail-oriented partners." The ultimate expression of Watts's philosophy is influence that doesn't feel like influence. When you've mastered this art, people do what you want them to do while believing it was their idea all along. This works because the human ego resists being controlled but loves being understood. When you influence someone invisibly,
You're not overriding their autonomy. You're aligning your desires with their deeper needs and values. They follow your lead because it feels like following their own wisdom. The master example is Gandhi's approach to Indian independence. He didn't defeat the British through force. He made their position morally untenable. By appearing weak, powerless, and completely non-threatening, he made it impossible for them to justify their domination. His apparent fragility exposed their brutality, making him more powerful than any army. In modern contexts, this manifests as the manager who creates conditions where team members naturally want to excel, the parent who structures choices so children naturally choose wisely, the friend who asks the right questions to help others discover their own solutions. Your practical arsenal. Instead of telling people what to do, try planting seeds of ideas and letting them grow. Ask questions that lead people to your conclusions. Share stories that illustrate your points without explicitly making them. Create environments where people naturally want to behave in ways that serve your goals. This invisible influence is the ultimate expression of power through apparent fragility.
We've journeyed through Alan Watts's revolutionary understanding of power, discovering that true strength lies not in displays of force, but in the masterful art of appearing fragile while dominating everything around you. We've explored the law of perceived weakness, the principle of strategic vulnerability, the art of effortless presence, and the paradox of not wanting. Then we advanced to yielding to win, strategic confusion, useful weakness, and invisible influence. Together, these principles form a complete system for authentic power, power that enhances rather than diminishes others, power that comes from inner security rather than external validation, power that creates rather than destroys. This is the difference between the tyrant who rules through fear and the sage who influences through wisdom. But remember, this knowledge is a double-edged sword. It can be used to build or to destroy, to liberate or to manipulate. The choice, as always, rests in your hands. Use it to protect yourself, to elevate others, and to create positive change in the world. But never use it to crush those who trust you. The universe has a way of reflecting back the energy we put out. Alan Watts once said, "The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance." This is your invitation to join that dance, to embrace the paradox of power through apparent fragility, to find strength in vulnerability, and to discover that the most profound influence comes not from what you can force, but from what you can allow. In the comments below, share which of these advanced strategies resonates most powerfully with you, and why. If this journey into the deeper mysteries of human influence has opened new possibilities in your mind, subscribe to continue exploring the hidden principles that shape our world. And if you found value in this exploration,
Your like tells me that this ancient wisdom still has relevance in our modern world.